go today with our brand new version 12.1, which is just released on Tuesday. And so let's get started. What are we going to cover? We're going to cover basic application creation and configuration, then some simple customization, then advanced application configuration, focusing on security and deployment. And then at the end, we'll talk a little bit more about where you can go to continue your education in IronSpeed Designer. We'll start with, what does IronSpeed Designer build? IronSpeed Designer is a rapid application development tool that builds web applications straight from your database. And you're using IronSpeed Designer because you want the fast application development, you want to, and therefore cut software development costs and reduce testing time. For basic application creation and configuration, first you have to prepare your database. Then you use the application wizard in IronSpeed Designer to create your application. To do that, you don't have to know about ASPX or the web technology used. You don't have to know about .NET. You don't have to be a developer. You do need a reasonable knowledge of your database and how it works, because your database represents the world that your application is modeling. So first you prepare your database. The better the database is structured, the more IronSpeed Designer can do. So you get better web pages, you get master detail pages, and it's easier to extend your application. In your database, you'll have one-to-many relationships. You'll have master detail, parent-child pages. They will provide you with the links that make your dispersed tables into real information. When you have lookup items to look up, be sure and use a lookup table. The items looked up, centered in a table, make it easier to modify, make it easier to maintain. Be sure that anything that is searched for in the database is indexed. Indexing the database is key to performance of the database and therefore your application. And since IronSpeed Designer builds its application straight from your database, your naming conventions in your database are very important. If you use meaningful names in the database, they will be translated into meaningful names in your application. You can use camel case, where you use upper and lower case together in one word, and IronSpeed Designer will parse it apart. You can use singular and plural. Make sure you use them consistently so that your application names are consistent. It's also important for your database that your field data types represent what they're trying to actually show. You don't use very large fields for just small items. An example is if you have a number that represents currency, then use a currency type rather than just binary or decimal. And so with that, we'll take a look quickly at the database we'll be using today. This is the Southwind database. It's one of the sample databases included in the sample databases folder that's installed with IronSpeed Designer. Hopefully you've already downloaded and installed Designer. That means you have an installation folder on your disk where you have IronSpeed Designer installed, and in that folder you'll find a sample databases folder. In there you'll see the Southwind database. Southwind database is a small order management system. It's in both Access and SQL Compact Server. The focuses around the orders table. With the orders table, it's linked to the order details and the products, and the products have categories. Products also have suppliers. The orders have customers, and they have shippers. And the orders are connected to the sales reps. With the sales reps come two security tables for sales rep roles and roles to provide role-based security if you want it for your database. Role-based security is very handy, and we won't be implementing the full role-based security today, but the tables are there, and if you want to experiment with it, you'll be able to do that. And so that's the summary of our database. We have some views that go along with it, but your views you construct as you need them as time goes on, and the need for information reflects what you have in views. You create your database views to represent complex joins or complex queries in your database, and then you can base your pages in your database, in your application, on those views, rather than just try to connect separate tables on a single page in IronSpeed Designer. Remember, IronSpeed Designer is not a query construction tool, it's a page construction tool. For doing items in the database, you should stick with using the tools that the database gives you. You'll want to prepare primary keys in your database. All of the tables should contain a primary key so that you can look up individual records. And when you can look up individual records, then you can use pages that use those individual records. You'll also want foreign keys in the database. The foreign keys are the links that tie your information together in a web of useful information. And they provide links to other tables. We also have a display foreign key as capability, where you have usually a key which is just a number or GUID that is a foreign key, but you can set your application to display that as some meaningful value in the foreign table. With all that prepared and your database ready to go, then you're ready to create an application with the Application Wizard. The Application Wizard is controlled by a large number of application generation options. These options all start with a very good default value, so you don't need to worry about them right away, but you should definitely know they're there. There are a large number of them, and there's a detailed treatment in the online help in part 2 of the online help. They generally come in 3 different types. There's the new application options that only apply to creating new applications. Once you create an application, changing one of these won't help. And then there's the new page options. They apply only to creating new pages. And once you've created a page, changing one of these options won't affect that page unless you, of course, delete it and then recreate it. And then there's the general application options, which apply to the application right now as it's built, and when you rebuild it, if you change them, they will take effect immediately throughout the application. The new application options can be seen in the Application Wizard from the Options button in the Application Wizard, and then you'll see the new application options that apply to your application. Then there's the new page options that apply to creating new pages. These are all available on the Pages step in the Application Wizard, where you select one of the pages, one of the page types. You can either right-click on it or click the Configure button and then see the application generation options. And with that, let's get on with starting our demo. Well, let's create our application with the Application Wizard. Then we'll start configuration immediately with configuring the menus and the start page, and then we'll take some questions. Remember, Cheryl said that questions are important to us. We want to hear what you have a question about so that we can answer your questions as well as just tell you what we're here to tell you. And let's open up IronSpeed Designer. With IronSpeed Designer, you'll need administrative permissions on the current machine. This is version 12.1, as I said, just released on Tuesday. and we're running a trial edition key. We'll open the Build an Application Now button, and we get the application wizard, go past the first screen to the starting screen of the application creation, where we select the application type. The application type is either web application or mobile application or mobile pages or both. Whether or not you want to use a RESTful API instead of just a straight database connection. And in addition to web applications, you can also create applications for SharePoint, either SharePoint 2007 or SharePoint 2010. And so we'll create both web and mobile pages today and see how that looks. Then you come to the page style step, where you select the page style that's going to determine the overall look of your application. We have two families of page styles. There's the modern family and the classic family. You can preview each of them when you're creating a new application. You can simply select the family and see the list of styles that apply to it. Of course, custom is how to create your own custom style. And we have modern or classic. Modern grid is a grid version of the modern and goes along in the modern family. In classic, you can see any of the previews just by selecting a name, seeing what the style looks like. Same thing with modern. You can preview the styles. And Champagne is the one we'll be using for our application today. Then we click Next and go on to the databases step. Here's where we select the database we'll be using for our application. Of course, it comes set to default to the Southwind database that I explained to you earlier we'll be using for the sample. But you can select your own database, in which case you can select Access or Compact Server, both of which are sample databases, all available sample databases. And then you can also use SQL Azure or full SQL Server or MySQL or Oracle. But for us today, it's the Southwind sample database. Go on next to the Pages step, and here's where we'll select the different tables and pages that we'll be using. Now, 12.1 is a departure from earlier selections. In version 12.1 from now on, you'll, with the pages, also select the panels and the fields directly when you select the pages to use. So the best way to use this for this demo, I'm going to turn off all of the pages that were pre-selected and select each one. And we're going to first start with the categories table. And we're going to have an add record page and an edit record page and a show record page. We're also going to have a show table page and a gallery page, since the categories contains the pictures of the categories. Now, with each of these types, we select the add record page, then we have to select which panels we want. Well, of course, we always want a master panel, but do you want any of the child panels? With this, I'll leave the product child panel, and then you can select the fields with each of the panels. I'll leave the default selections for the fields, but all these are selectable and determine what goes on your page. Same thing for the edit record. When we're editing, I want to focus on the category, so I don't want my child table. For the show record, I want to see the child table. And for the show detail table page, I don't want to see the child panel. Then with gallery, we just see the master panel. Now for mobile pages. These are pages that reflect the same data but are designed to fit on a mobile device, and so look significantly different. Let's not add adding or editing pages for mobile. For mobile, we'll just be able to look at our information. So with a show record page for mobile, we'll allow both the categories and the products child table panels. And for the table page, we'll see just the master page. And so we go through that with each of the panels that we want to, or each of the tables that we want to have in our application. Next will be the panels, or the products. It will look very much like the categories. We'll have an ad record, the products with the order details. I don't want to see order details with the products, so let's take those panels out. Same here, same here. And we'll leave with the show record, we'll leave a parent table panel in there so we can see the categories that go along with the product record. Then we'll go to the product table, and same thing, I don't want all these child panels cluttering it up. I just want to focus on my products. With the gallery, you see just the master panel. And again, we won't be adding or editing records in the mobile devices, but the mobile page, the mobile record page will show just the products, not any order details. And same with the show table mobile page. Now we've got the sales rep again with, here we go, the sales reps with pictures also, so we'll be having a gallery for the sales rep. In the sales reps, there are a number of connected tables, but we don't want to see any of those pages. Let's see what's going on here. Sorry, this is sales rep roles. That's why it looked different. I wanted sales reps. And with sales reps, we want to see an add record page, but none of these child panels. So we'll take them out. Same with the edit records. Take out the child panels. And show record, I don't want to see any of the child panels. In the table, let's just look at the straight sales rep master panel only. The gallery page, and again, no adding or editing on a mobile device, but the show page should show just the sales reps. And so that's those pages. Next, we'll be showing orders, and the orders we'll have with order details, and we'll allow editing order details. We won't show products, and the show products record, all we want to see is the orders and the order details. We could also see the customers with the orders, but not the sales reps. And we could see the parent, the shippers also for the show record. And then with the orders table, we want to see the orders and the order details. Don't want to focus on anything else, so we'll take out all the rest of the child panels. And the gallery doesn't need to be used because there are no pictures in the orders table, so the gallery is essentially worthless. And again, no add or edit records or tables in the mobile devices, so we'll just, in the show record, we'll see the orders and the order details and the orders master panel for the table. And one more to select, the customers. Again, we'll go through all this, and with the customers, we just want to focus on the customers, so we'll take out all the child panels. And again, no gallery and no adding and editing in mobile devices. And so we pretty much have the pages we want for our application. Once we have all those, As you can see, if you've done this with earlier versions, it's a little more time to select exactly what you want, but the good side of that is you get to select exactly what you want right up front. And so next we go on to the next step, which is the localization step. This is a very important feature of IronSpeed Designer that allows you to localize your application for different languages. We'll add Dutch to show you what it means. So we'll be able to see our application in both English and Dutch, depending on what we select at runtime. Then we'll go on to the final, the configuration step, where we select all the rest of the features of the application. First is its name and where we're going to be working on it, where we're keeping our applications while we're working on them. This is in my testing folder. It's my app 2. And what code language we want to use, what .NET framework we want to use. This depends on our server and the .NET framework that's running on our server. So we could use any of these that are available that will work on our server. This is what my server is going to be running today. And then which Visual Studio goes along with the .NET framework you're targeting. And then which type, whether web application or website, of the application you want. And with all those choices made, we can go on next and finish, see a summary of what we're going to be creating, and finish our application. Designer will run through all of our choices and construct the pages that we've asked for. And then it will take those pages, and if I have it set right, it will run my application in the development server. ASP.NET Development Server comes with both IronSpeed Designer and Visual Studio. IronSpeed Designer works hand in hand with Visual Studio in developing your application. And so we have our application, and now is it going to run it, or should be running it? Once it's created the pages we're looking at over here in the Application Explorer, you can see the folders and the pages added, and then it creates the code behind files for the pages and then runs it in Development Server. Here we have our Development Server showing the application in my browser. The default browser here is IE, but you could use Firefox, Chrome, something else. That's okay. And our application is starting up in a local mode where nobody outside of this machine can have access to it. And here's our application. So we've got the application started that we want. I wanted to focus on the sales reps, so I'm going to rearrange the menus to bring those around. And then we also didn't want to start with just the categories page. Since the sales reps will be running this thing, I wanted to go to the sales rep gallery page, and I want to start with this page. So let's go back to our application. Start with finding our sales rep pages. Here in the Application Explorer, our application has been created, and we see the presentation layer, the mobile presentation layer, we'll see mobile pages, and the common areas of presentation, in particular the shared folder, and then our business layer and data access layer, where the database is tied into the application. Now, we wanted to focus on our sales rep gallery page, so I'll right-click on that and just set it as the web start page. And I'll also find my menus in my menu panels here, and if we right-click on that, we can configure the menu so that I can bring the sales reps forward and have the sales rep the first menu. And we'll put the categories down with the products and be ready to go. Now we can run our application. Actually, the run button is a multiple run and preview button. There is, if you'll notice the tooltip, it says if you just click the run button, you'll preview whatever is focused. So I'm looking at a menu control here. If I click the preview button, in my browser, I'll get the menu control. That's all I'll get. I'll see what's focused. If on the other hand, I go to my control and click Run the application, then I'll run the application using my new start page and my new menus, and then I have my application. So let's kill these old ones. And now that our application is running, let's take a look at the settings and see that I can actually select either English or Dutch. If I select to view my application in Dutch, you'll notice that these names don't change. They don't change because they come from the database. They don't come from inside the application. We do translation of the fixed text in the application. And so you'll have Dutch modifiers, but the names that come from the database are not actively translated. So we have our application available in Dutch to all our Dutch users out there. Now let me put it back to English so I can read it better. I still haven't, all these demonstrations I've done, I still don't read Dutch very well. And there's our application now running in English. Let's see. I have a question here. In my project, I have chosen Cabernet 2012 style. I find it difficult to display a number of items on the view page. I like to display a number of items. I like to display the number of record on the bottom of the page. The record on the bottom of the page, the count of the record, it really depends on how you're viewing the records, and so it's there's a good example of it in the pagination controls. Let's talk about that later, so just keep that in mind, that when I discuss pagination controls, there's an example of showing a record count in the pagination controls on your pages. For that, what I mean by the pagination controls is, let me get my browser out here, and let's look at it. We know there are a lot of products, so if we show the product records, we'll see that a page only shows a few records, and then you can paginate from there, page size and the number of page you're on. There are other pagination controls that include more information, including record count, item count of where you are, and so you can use those as an example of where to find the record count. Now let's go back to part 2, simple customization. We've already begun configuring the application with customizing the menu and the start page. There are many other forms of customization. Of course, this is an ASP.NET application, straight standard ASP.NET, and so you can do anything with it that you do with a regular ASP application. So you can use Visual Studio or a text editor to make any changes you want. But with IronSpeed Designer, we have certain protocols that allow you to make changes and remain consistent with IronSpeed Designer, and we provide lots of shortcuts for providing customizations. We'll talk about a few of those. You can change the application logo and footer, change page layout, use the HTML cell editor to edit the contents of all of the cells in your pages. You can change the data sources and filtering of the data shown in your pages, change the CSS style, which change the whole look of your application, change pagination controls. As I said, we'll be looking at where to find those and then have a look at them. And you can add a chart or other controls. Actually, you can add any number of other controls to your pages, and so you have a large number of things you can do to easily modify your applications. The logo is found in the header, ASCX control, and it's just the logo and changing the logo, so we'll be able to do that to our application. You can also change the footer text in the footer control. You can change page layout customization. We'll probably do this to one or more of our pages. You just find the page, and it's all the contents of the pages are modeled in a grid type environment where you can move things around in the grid. You can insert rows and columns, merge and split cells, and you can navigate to any of the parts of the page because it's not just a single grid for the whole page. It's a grid for each part of the page, and the page is a whole hierarchy of grids. Here's one showing the master page that all pages start with, and then the show categories table page, which contains just a simple categories table control and nothing else. Inside the categories table control are the header and fields. The HTML cell editor lets you edit any of the contents in the grid, any of the cells. You can put in anything you'd like, anything that's legal in your application. The cell editor is easy to get to. You just select the cell and then select the tab, the button for editing, and get the cell editor. Now, every page in IronSpeed Designer is backed by a data source. The data source is the data that's pulled from the database to show either it's a single record or a table. When we have a table, we can filter that table so that the data source can be filtered, or you can filter the table itself. Here's an example of taking the data source for a table page and then limiting it by adding a where clause so that we're only looking at the products in a certain category instead of all categories. We could also do the same thing on the page, on the Show Products table page. Instead of filtering the data immediately with a where clause, we could add a filter for the category ID and then filter on that category ID. Now, your application gets its look and feel from its styles. Remember, you picked the page styles to start for your application. Those CSS styles are contained in the App Themes folder in the Application Explorer, and you can customize any of them. The best way to do that is to go to the base styles, which contains all of the styles that are used. Once you find out by using your browser debugger which styles are used in which area of your page that you want to change, you can find that style in your base styles, then go to this, copy it, and paste it into the styles file, which is initially empty. Once you've done that, you can modify it, and it will override the base styles. Anything that's in the styles file overrides what's in the base styles. And now we'll talk about pagination controls. As you saw on a table control, every table control has a pagination control, which lets you go through the various pages of data when there's enough data to fill more than one page. So we saw a simple pagination modern, which is the default used in our application, since it's a modern application. But you can use a much more complex pagination control if you'd like. And it's very easy to do that because you can go to the shared folder and do some creative renaming, putting aside this control and then renaming one of the others to be that name, and then your entire application will use the new pagination control. Of course, you can also go to each individual page and change the page individually to a different control. And now one of the most frequent type of modifications is just adding new fields and other fields to your pages. We have a large toolbox that gives you headers and footers, panels. Panels is very important because it contains all the data-backed panels of all the rest of the data in your application besides the one that's used on this page. Then there's the charts, which I mentioned specifically because they provide a very powerful way to increase the usability of your pages to your users. Then there's fields and labels, filters and sorts, where you can add new filtering to your application. Sums and counts also very useful when you want to summarize information on a page, and Google Maps to allow you to use interface to the Google Maps. And we have other controls, and then the .NET controls that are available, and Ajax controls. When you use the panels, you get the configuration wizard. The configuration wizard allows you to configure that particular panel that you dropped into your page, and so allows you to set the application generation options just for that panel. The charts, as I showed you, they provide an excellent way of summarizing chartable data that you have in your application. So here's an example of how I've added a chart to my sales rep gallery and then can see summaries of the statistics for the sales reps. Now for the demo, we'll go down through, try a couple of those, see what I have time for. We can certainly change the logo, change page layout, use the HTML cell editor, and maybe we'll get to something else. I don't know if we'll have time for it, but all these things are stuff you can try on your own application now when you build it. And then, of course, we'll take more questions. Whoops, not yet. First, we'll go back to our application and start immediately with the header and footer, because definitely don't want to sit with a generic header. The footer I won't care about, but the header, we'll go to the header panel in the headers and footer section here and find the logo. And then instead of just the proper, what I need to see the rest of my designer, I'll get the properties panel and hide away the toolbox for right now. And with the properties panel, I want to find the logo, its appearance. If you're looking for some property and you don't see it, you may have to open up one of the sections that may be hidden in there, because what we're looking for is the URL that the image that the logo uses. This is the generic one. To get a new one, I'm going to have to go to my, let's get this out of the way here, and go to my corporate website, which I have a copy of here on this computer. Go to my images folder in the corporate website and find an Iron Speed image. Here's the logo that I want to use. So let's just copy this, take that image out to my testing folder in my 12.1.0 and use for my app 2. Here we have the application we're working on. So if I can open up that and go to its images folder and paste in my logo, and while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and copy the text of that file name, because I'll use it to update the text in the property. And now I've updated the logo on all of my pages, since the header file is used for almost all the pages. If I were using email pages, then I would also update the email header file, which has its own separate logo. So we've updated the logo, and the footers are easy. Now let's look at modifying one of the pages using some of the page modification tools. Let's go to the products page and try our products. Let's try the show products page. I want to preview that. So to preview it, I can click the run button, and it will preview just that page in my browser. And of course, building it first, since I made some changes. And now you notice I've got my header. And here's the products page as it comes by default. And it shows the category that goes with that product. But I decided I don't want this here, so let's just take that off. And I also want to use the space better. I'd rather have 3 columns here, so let's take some of these fields and move them into a 3rd column. Do that is easy. let's take these three fields. We'll move them over. To do that, we select one of the labels, then we'll select its field, hold down the Shift key and select the whole group, and move them over to a new column. We'll start. And do the same thing here and here. Now we've got three columns, but let's look at the rest of the page. This is just the field section we're in. This page, remember, consists of the page itself, and in that page, the product record control and the tab container. And I want to take the tab container out, so we'll just delete that row. And now we've simplified our page. Let me build it and just run the page again. Let's close the old one here. And so now we have a much simpler page available to us. All right. Now we have the page and it's much simpler. I also wanted to highlight my price. So let's take a look at how to use the HTML editor here. The price is this field, and so we'll bring up the HTML editor. Here we can use the font color to set the font color for this item. And you notice it's changed the style of the cell. Now, when I preview the page, we'll see, come back to my browser here, guys. There it is. We'll see that our price is highlighted. And so you get the idea of the kinds of things you can do to make your application do exactly what you want. Don't see any more questions just yet. So let's, well, we need to get on to part 3 because we still have quite a bit to do. Our application is ready. It's actually running, but we wouldn't want to turn it loose on the web until we added security to it. So we're going to add application security, and then we're going to deploy the application after it's had security added. To add security, we'll use the application security wizard to determine who can sign in and what they can do. And for the type of security we'll be using database security. We provide both database security, Active Directory security, where you use the Active Directory that you're working in to provide you security information. This is very handy for intranet applications within a company. And then there's SharePoint security, where you have a SharePoint application and you prepare SharePoint groups. And then there is Windows authentication, where you just get the information about who's logged in Windows. We'll be using the database security. We'll use the sales rep table. And then you can also use role-based security. Remember, I said we had the tables available, where we have a sales rep role table and a role ID table, so that we can assign sales reps to different roles and then base the security access on the roles rather than the sales rep themselves. To do that, we use two tables, a many-to-many relationship, so that the sales reps can have many roles. Once we assign the security and the tables we'll be using, we then assign the security to the pages. We have to select which pages are to be secured, but we don't have to limit the assignment of security to just pages. We can use the property sheet to go into any page and find the security property for any control, and we can assign individual security access to individual controls. So now that we've explained that, we're going to go do that to our application. And once we do it, we'll deploy it to our web server so that not only can you see it on the screen here, but you'll be able to bring it up live in your own browser. And then we'll take any questions you have. First, let's go to our application, go to the security wizard, go past the startup screen, select the database but with no roles, and select the sales rep tables. Now these are good field names, these are good candidates for the security tables, but we're going to use the last name as both the username and the password to make it very easy for this demo application. Now we also have a very good feature called the lost password feature. If you have email information with your user information in the database, then you can select that email information, and then your login page will have a link which will allow the users to request that their password security information be emailed to them. Once we make the selections, we assign the security. For our application, we'll just make the Add Categories page require that you are a signed-in user. Now, we could select all pages, but for this test application, we'll just select the Add Categories page. And then you'll notice that the permissions haven't changed. Once I make my selections, I have to set the selections or it won't be incorporated. Then you can go on and finish the application. And Designer will run through your security selections, make all the necessary changes, and provide you with your secured application. And to verify that, we'll go ahead and run the application. And we'll notice we now have a login feature up here. We could log in there, or we could test it by going to the Add Categories page. When we go to the Add Categories page, you notice we can't see it immediately. We have to log in. So let's log in as Fuller, one of the sales reps. And now we can see our category information. So let's cancel this. And back to our, well, first of all, we have to go back to our application. Now our application is secured. We want to be able to deploy it. To deploy it, I'm going to close up this so I can see some more things. And I want to go to my common and go to my web config. In my web config file, now this is an access database. And an access database to be used on a server must be, it's a file database, and so must be contained within the file system of the application itself. So we're going to change where we're using the access database. We'll go look at our application. Here's our application, right? Remember, it's my app 2. So I'm going to put a database folder. This is a copy of the sample applications database folder. And we're going to put that in the application. Then we're going to take out all the databases in it that we're not using and just keep the Southwind database that we're using. So now our database is embedded in the application, so we have to change the connection string in the application in the web config file to reflect that. See, right now it's saying it's in the installation folder, but I don't want the one in the installation folder. I want to use the Southwind database that's in the databases folder. So all I have to do is use a local file reference to the DB folder, and now when I save it, our application uses its internal database. Let's check that. Let's go back, and anytime we change the database, we have to go to the Tools menu, synchronize the database schema, and it should tell us that we indeed have no changes. Now that we have our database internal to the application, we need to FTP this application to our server, and it should run from there. I don't need to FTP it. I'm running on a server that's in our local network here, so we're just going to use WinZip and make a zip file of the entire application and its database. Once we get that zip file, we'll copy it over to let's copy this. And now I already have a connection to my Galaxy server, which is my web server. And in my sample applications folder, I'm going to paste in the new application. Now I want you to see where this is coming up, so I'll go back to use my browser instead of the server. In your browser, I want you to go ahead, open a new window, and go to ironspeed.com/crash course. It shows the static page showing the advertisement for the crash course today. In just a minute, we'll go back to our server and we'll change that so that it shows this application. We have the zip file here. Let's extract it so that we have the full application folder. And once I get my application folder, I have to configure IIS to point to that, and I have to do one more thing to the application folder. I have to go to the databases folder. Now, IIS is going to try to access the database here. And to do that, it's going to need permissions to do it, since it doesn't have very high permissions itself. So we're going to change the security on that folder, and we're going to add a user. We're going to add everyone, and we're going to give everyone permission to use the database. This will cover the users that have the application that has to use its own database. We'll give everyone full control over the database. And when we do that, all we need to do is run IIS Manager, go to my sites, and on my corporate website, I have the crash course page. We can use the advanced settings and change where it's pointed. See, right now, the application is in My App. That's the static page you're looking at. So we're going to change this to My App 2. Say OK. And just to check that, we're going to manage the application and browse it. And refresh the page. It still had this in its cache, so I have to actually refresh it to make sure that it gets the new page. And now I'll see the application that we've created, and you will too. On your crash course page, if you refresh it, you should see the crash course application. And there it is. Let's hope you see it on yours. And I've got one question. Since this is a new version of IronSpeed, do I need to rebuild my current web application? IronSpeed Designer, every application has some changes in it, and so when you move from one version of IronSpeed Designer to another, it requires migration of the application. If I have an application in 12.2, then I want to use it in 12.1. I can open it in 12.1. It'll ask me to migrate. The migration should be very simple for such a simple version change. We haven't changed that much, except for the wizards, which don't affect the content of the application at all. And so your application should migrate no problem. Just open it in the newer version. Once you do, it will be migrated to that version, and you won't be able to use the old version to look at it. But such is the necessity of doing migration. And so that's the only question I see right now. There's one more question period at the end, but right now I'm going to talk about what I haven't covered. We've got our application. It's out there, and it's live on the web, and you should be seeing it. But there's a whole lot I haven't covered. We haven't talked anything about workflow and using the email feature that you saw on the login page in your application. We haven't talked really about formulas and doing code customization, how to change the computing that's done in your application. There's a whole nother webinar on formulas and also on code customization. We haven't looked at the databases tab. We're continually looking at, in our application, at the Application Explorer and all of the pages that it lets you look at. But there's also a databases tab where you can see the content of the database and the properties for all the database. And I mentioned the display foreign key as, and you can see the properties for a foreign key. Let's see if we have a foreign key. The category ID is a foreign key. And here's the display as. It will display as the category name rather than the category ID. Okay. Back to our layout editor and back to my slides. We haven't talked about debugging. Debugging is, well, let's hope you don't have to do it, but everybody ends up wanting to look at something. And we have an excellent feature in IronSpeed Designer that allows you to see what your application is doing. If you go to the Build menu and you go to Tracing and Event Logging and go to Turn on Application Level Tracing, then when we look at a page, let's just look at the products page that we looked at earlier, and we'll preview that. When we preview that page, we'll see the page that we had, but underneath the page, it doesn't end there. Here's all this information that's added to tell you what's going on, how the database is accessed, what's going on with everything on your page. So you can use that feature. And we haven't talked about other forms of deployment. What we did was called simple Xcopy deployment, where you copy the entire application folder and then run that on your web server. It's great for quick and easy development. Provides a little needs a little extra file space on your web server, and you can tone that down by using the deployment wizard to make deployment packages that you can then deploy. And there's much, much more. There's we have a large video section where you can see videos of various topics available on our website. We have additional training courses. This is 101, but we have intermediate, we have advanced, and third-party training courses. Go to the training section of our website, and if you're eligible, you can sign up right there. And of course, we have an extensive online help. We have over 1,000 pages of online help. And you can search on the search box for the content of the help and get just what you want, or you can browse the table of contents, all on our website. In addition, we have an excellent technical forum. The technical forum allows you to interact with other users about your iron speed questions, and so by all means join that. And you can sign up for technical support. We provide paid technical support. It's a separate subscription. You can get a subscription to technical support and then interact with our engineers about your specific problems on your application. We also have a great group of MVPs. These are private consultants. They don't work for IronSpeed, but they're extremely knowledgeable in IronSpeed Designer, and they will help you with your IronSpeed Designer problems and can help you with training and application construction and any other number of IronSpeed Designer related issues. And for all these issues, if you want some real advice, somebody to talk to about how to get your IronSpeed Designer project off the ground, talk to your sales rep. Every sales rep can help you with exactly what you need for your particular circumstances. So give them a try and see if you can get your IronSpeed Designer project running right away. And we have a couple more questions. Okay. And if it will not affect what the users see on the website. What is that? Okay, let's see. I think that was a second here. If I get a license for 12.0, can I use the same license to activate 12.1 after I uninstall 12.0? No. The licenses are for major and minor versions. And so 12.1 is a different license than 12.0. And I think, Gregory, this is a follow-up question. It will not affect what the users see on the website. You only affect what the users see on your website when you actually deploy your application. Any development you do on your local machine doesn't affect anything that goes on the website unless you deploy it. How can you edit the menu panel to group some pages into one main item? For example, combine all edit pages into an admin main menu section. Actually, Eric, that's done in the sample applications. We have sample applications available on our website. And if you go look at, I think the OMS sample application has exactly that menu structure. And you use the, let me get my application here. You just use the menu wizard, configure menu, because I can take, suppose I wanted to group these, so then I would go to this, I would insert menu item, this is a new menu item, and then I want to put products and orders. Oops, what happened to my orders? What are orders? What? Orders. Come on, guys. There. Orders under the menu, and so now I have a group here. I can change this name, just select the name over here, and so forth. So I hope you get the idea out of that. If you customize your code and rerun the application creation process, does it overwrite your customized code? There is a whole protocol we have so that that doesn't happen, because that would be very unhandy. You put all of your customized code in section 1. All of the code behind files have a section 1 and a section 2, and you put your customizations in section 1. Section 1 is never overridden, so and that overrides what's in section 2. Actually, it does. You override it by how you declare it in section 1, but you can then keep your customizations and not have them affected by rebuilding your application. Look at the code customization tutorial in the help, because it's really important that you understand that process. And with that, sorry we don't have more time to talk about it all, but that's it for today. I want to thank you for coming. We do this just about every Friday, unless it's a holiday, so Come back again if you need to do it again. Anybody's welcome. And right now, thank you for coming today, and have a good day, and try out your Iron Speed Designer.